All right, well, we'll go ahead and get started. Again, this is the first Work Hard, Travel Well chat. So, thank you all so much for joining. Tonight, we're going to talk about solo travel. And my name is Kim Hawk, and I am the founder of Work Hard, Travel Well. And I created Work Hard, Travel Well because it's something that I'm very passionate about, making sure that you take time out to go on a trip, plan a vacation instead of just always working. So, no matter if you're in corporate America, working on a side hustle, or working on to build your own business, make sure you take some time out to take a vacation and enjoy and see the world. And so on tonight's Work Hard Travel Well panel, we have Brian Oliver from Beyond Be More. So Brian is also a travel blogger, and his blog is called Beyond Be More because he's very passionate about seeing the world and just getting out there from Baltimore and taking that back home experience and seeing the world. We have Josh Just Jake GQ McDonald.
Yeah.
And he is the host of the Travel Guides podcast. And we have Amanda Frankel, who is also a travel content creator, and she curates her travel content on social media using the hashtag Frankie's Flight. And you can also follow her. I'll be sharing everyone's Instagram information towards the end and a recap email. So the reason why I chose solo travel is a big topic because I've come across a lot of people that just want to wait on people to see the world. I have a lot of people that are just like, oh, I want to go on this trip, but I can't find anyone to go with, or my family won't go. So that's why I created this travel discussion so we could talk about ways that, you can finally get out there and take a solo trip and not be afraid. And also just being able to connect. If you already are traveling solo now, connect with other travelers to share best practices. So basically, we're going to talk about, have a discussion, have a few questions. We had some questions that are provided before from a lot of you all, and we're going to kind of start with that. And then if you have any questions, feel free to chat, use the chat button to add additional questions, and we'll get to them as we can. Also, we'll try to take some at the end also. So let's get right into it. I just started traveling solo is because I didn't want to wait on anyone. I basically took a trip very last minute, and I didn't want to try to say, hey, you want to go with me or not? So I was just ready to go. It was last minute, and so I jumped in my car and took a road trip up to DC, and that was my first solo trip. So I want to know from you all, what do you think prompted you to take your first solo trip?
I can go ahead and kick that off. I'm a self-proclaimed lone wolf. So I honestly like to march to the beat of my own drum. I know that I'm a lot less fancy than a lot of my friends. So I can do with less. And so in the spirit of not wanting to wait for people, I've always been one to just go. Specifically traveling domestically. I can remember venturing out to Arizona for the first time and just kind of going out into the desert and looking for interesting things to do when I was in college and whatnot, not needing anybody there. And so that was probably the first time that I ventured anywhere by myself, and then abroad down to Panama, and really just getting a chance to enjoy the culture and honestly be able to lean on other people and on the expertise of other people to show me around and make sure that I'm being able to be safe and couple that with my research.
Okay.
Cool. Yeah, the first time I went away alone, well, solo, it wasn't intentional. It just happened. Of course, as everyone always says, people back out. So it was a trip to Europe, and I was determined to still go. And the first stop was to London, and I figured it couldn't be that bad. They speak English as their main language, and I just decided to go for it. Before I went, this was a couple of years ago, a good amount of years ago, and technology wasn't as great as it was, so I was using a lot of things off of like MapQuest and Google Maps so I could know where to go once I got there and everything like that. And I just took the risk. I don't think I told anyone. Like,
Oh, wow.
going alone. It was just like, yeah, we're going, but I didn't tell them I was going solo. And once I got there, I ended up taking the train also to Paris. And once I got back home, it was just like the most liberating feeling ever. And I was like, if I did that, I can do anything by myself. So that sparked it, and I just kept doing it.
Gotcha.
Nice. I'll go ahead and jump in. Not so much solo, but like my first experience of traveling, I started when I was in high school. I did one of the teen tours around the country. So I did like a 6-week bus tour, and that was kind of alone, yet with other people, but without my family and being young. And then once I got older and wanted to start broadening my horizons and traveling more, my first real big solo trip was 2014. I really wanted to go to Thailand. And I had said to my 2 girlfriends at the time, like, let's go. And they kind of looked at me like, why would we go there? So I sat for a minute and was like, oh, maybe I don't want to go by myself though. And they don't want to go, so I'll just wait. And then I don't know what it was, but something just clicked. And I said, you know what, I'm going. Booked a ticket, and it was one of the best decisions of my life because it then spearheaded the rest of my solo travel life.
Wow. Wow. So we all talked about it, going ahead and booking that trip. So were you nervous with, when you started to book that first trip or preparing for that trip? I was kind of nervous at first, but since I traveled a lot for work, I did a lot of road trips. So I wasn't so afraid about domestically, but were you guys nervous, made your first international trip? I know for me, my first solo international trip was to Turks and Caicos. And I was fine up until planning it. But when I got there, I was like, okay, this is I even the day of was like, I don't know if I want to go because I'm literally going to this lovely island by myself. But, talk about, were you guys nervous in that process or getting there?
All right.
Go ahead, Ryan.
Once I was planning the trip, I got a little bit nervous. The most that I was nervous on that trip, it wasn't when I got to London. Once I got to London, I was like, this is perfect. I think that was a dream come true. So the whole time there, I was just living it up, going everywhere, meeting people, taking pictures, doing everything like that. I caught the late train to Paris. And if anyone's ever gone to Paris, a train station, it's not in this glamorous area. Once I got off the train, it was after midnight, I want to say. And I didn't know that in Paris you could pretty much drink in public. And people were on the train. Well, not on the Eurostar, but once I got on the metro, people were on the train with full fifths of Jack Daniels.
That's a party.
Yeah.
I was walking outside trying to find an ATM machine. It was a lot of people drunk. They were all speaking in French, trying to ask me questions. And I guess people have been partying, so people don't know that Paris is a lot more, I don't want to say dirty, but it's not as clean as it comes across when you see the photos. And for me to see just so many random stragglers on the street and trash and everything. I was walking to my hotel, and it was dark alleys, and that was when I was getting a little bit nervous. Yo, what did you get yourself into? So I was just praying that I got to the hotel safe, basically off of these paper instructions, since the phones weren't, with all the apps. And then I made it, and the rest of the trip turned out cool. But that first night in Paris was whoa.
So what about you, Amanda?
Yeah, I was nervous for different reasons than people probably think. I was more nervous, which also comes to say we're kind of where I was in my life at that point. I was nervous about having to plan it by myself and not running it by everyone to get their input on it, or if I was, making the right decision what I was booking, or was I going to have fun by myself doing it. I never really thought about safety, which I guess was probably not the smartest thing, but that's maybe what got me through it. But I think my confidence level then was lower than what it is now, because I kept double questioning, am I making the right decision? Is this trip going to be fun? Or should I go to this city? Or because when you travel with someone, you have their input and you get their ideas on what they want to do. So to make all this decision yourself, it was like a lot of pressure for me, I felt. But now it's one of the things that I absolutely love about traveling solo is you get to decide what you want to do and where you want to go. I definitely was probably nervous when I touched down, because it's like you land in the country and you get off the plane and it's like, okay, this is it. Like, you don't have the person next to you to look to say, where should we go? Or how do we get the taxi? Or you gotta figure it out. Which I also find beautiful. So, I mean, I was a little nervous. I still get nervous. I was probably nervous again when I went to India. I truly felt like alone there.
Okay.
So, it was good. I never felt unsafe in that point, but it has its ups and downs, more ups.
So, any nerves on your end, Mr. GQ?
So I'll back up a little bit, because I always wanted to travel abroad, but I didn't have the opportunity to when I was in college, because I was playing football, and so that we were pretty much like banned from anything that wasn't sports. And so when I saved up through grad school and was determined to like take my trip abroad, and so I had a buddy who I moved over to Europe with for 3 months. And that was pretty much where my fear was. I was very nervous because he had no fear. And then secondly, I also learned the model of how to go somewhere without a plan and create one once I'm there. So that was where we were staying in hostels largely. So I understood, like, you get in, you explore, we get settled in our room, make loose plans, and then go down to the hostel bar, meet people, and then wait until I'm able to form a relationship and then move out. But then was able to refine that over time for when I was alone doing it, to where I'm collecting information from the time I am about to take off until I'm actually enacting those plans. So every person is a touch point that I can leverage for information and context on the country, the city, the people, or the places to go. So once I, through the European, my first Euro trip, that alleviated me of a lot of the butterflies that I felt. So when I was going alone, of course, I felt a little nervous, but once I touched down, it's that race favor, I believe is how you pronounce it, where you're like super excited, but you're like nervous at the same time, that feeling that you get. And so it was just more so that, and once you get in, then it's, you're in your element.
Right. Okay. So, Josh, you touched on, planning everything. And I do have a question that was submitted ahead of time from Philip. And he asked, like, how do we plan our itineraries, basically, when you're going on a solo trip? I know for me, I use a lot of social media. I'm probably polling a lot of my followers just to kind of say, hey, what did you do here? I also use TripAdvisor to kind of see, like, what are the most, like, top-rated things to do. And just kind of, they actually have, like, there's Wikipedia. They actually have, like, a Wikipedia for travel. So I'll look at what's going on in the destination. So I kind of just pick from there, but I know for me, you can't really have just a set itinerary, because when you're by yourself, you don't know what's going to happen. You could plan a certain thing and you get there and it's completely different. So I also kind of just remember to be flexible as well. So, how do you all plan your itinerary when you're going solo?
I reach out to my network first. We're in a great point in time right now where I feel like there are a lot of young people and young people of color that are traveling abroad, and there's a wealth of knowledge in our tight networks. So I do that as well. Shamelessly with Google search, top 10 things to do when I'm traveling somewhere. And then honestly, I will look at some of the blogs and research. And a shameless plug, the Travel Guides is seeking to be a part of this process. And so being able to allow people to benefit from the experiences of others as a first touch point of research when going on these trips.
Yeah, I definitely, when planning, I kind of search around. I use tons of different sites. I'm subscribed to daily flight deals. So I'm known to get the flight deal, and then if it is a good price and I have absolutely no plans to go anywhere, but the price is unbeatable, then I'll book it, and that's how I'm known to take most of my trips. But I definitely, like you said, Kim, flexibility is a big key in solo traveling in general, but for sure solo traveling. Depending on where I'm going, the countries that I tend to go to are kind of underdeveloped and more third world. Sadly, I've been to 17 countries and only, I think, 3 or 4 of them have been in Europe. So the countries that I tend to go to, I really like to have a mix of kind of like the hustle and bustle city. And then I like to do a little bit of the beach and relaxation if it's possible. And really like immerse myself in the local culture of it. So I definitely reach out to people via social media. Like Josh said, I think we're in a really awesome time right now where it's right at our fingertips to be able to just shoot something online and say, just like we're doing right now, hey, who's been here? Can you give me some tips? Reading blogs, I definitely read reviews. I think they're super helpful. Also being cautious with reading reviews because everyone is different and has different experiences. But I like to do a little bit of planning and leaving stuff open because I find that's where, as cheesy and cliche as it is, that's where the adventure happens. Where your time is open and you don't have plans to do something.
Agreed.
But kind of just researching where you're going, seeing what the country is known for, what important parts are there, the history, sites, definitely the people, the culture, and finding different things to do within that.
Yeah, like everyone else has said, using your network, there's so many groups, and then so many different on social media that you can use to find a lot of information. I do tend to use TripAdvisor mainly, but that's just the first thing I'll do is just click the top things to do, and I really only pay attention to like the top 10. Beyond that, I know it's probably something that I'm not interested in, and some people love museums, but I normally just automatically skip them. I find that I like go to the museum way too fast, and I don't remember anything that I saw there. So I'd rather like get out in the city and explore and get my history through that. Sometimes I'll do like a lot of cities have free walking tours, and that's normally like one of the first things I'll try to do. And most of them are pretty informative. And once you finish walking the city for that couple of hours, after that, you pretty much have a base of where to go and how you want to get around. So that helps tremendously. And I normally do that. But sometimes I land and don't have much of an itinerary at all and just go with the flow. And it helps sometimes because I'll end up asleep sometimes. And that's when I get the best rest sometimes, like on trips. And then I wake up refreshed and ready to go after that.
Gotcha. Okay. And then going back to, I guess, talking about planning and the itinerary, like what other tools do you use to actually book it? We talked about, some flight deals, and talked about like maybe using TripAdvisor and then looking at, the free tour, walking tours. But what tools do you use to actually book? And also, second part to that question is like, how do you find the best discount? Because that's a lot of what I saw, and people wanted to know, like, how do you find discounts? Because when you do solo travel, a lot of the packages charge you more just because you're by yourself. So what tools do you guys use to book as well as find the best discount?
Yeah, I always find that problem when it's like double occupancy is the price for it. And I'm like, no, but I want to go by myself. So probably to a fault, I am a huge like researcher, but I enjoy it. So I will like see if I've only done one package deal. So I'll tend to like see a package and then research it all on my own and see the difference and what the prices are. But I subscribe to, and I'll definitely put this in the chat so everyone can use it later, but I subscribe to Scott's Flight Deal, theflightdeal.com I use, and Thrifty Traveler. So they are all free sites that they email you every day at 2 p.m. With all of the flight deals for the day. And they're all over the country. You can do different settings for it. So that's kind of how I do my flights. I also use Skyscanner as a really great one because you can put in, if anyone hasn't used Skyscanner before, you can put in the city, you put in the month, and it tells you everywhere in the world what the prices are for that month. So you don't have to pick dates. You don't have to pick a specific city. So I find that to be really helpful. When I'm in country or looking for things to do, I use apps like Triposo, I find is really helpful. They have like a currency converter, a language converter, things to do, places to eat. An app that's growing that I really like is iWanderKit, where it connects you with local people in that city for you to meet up with if you wanted to do that. And just really just researching on TripAdvisor, using those resources to see what tours are out there, people that have been before. But really, as much as people don't want to plan and research, you really have to do it to get the best deal, because sometimes your top 10 on TripAdvisor is going to be your most expensive and not always the best.
That's a fair point. I think so. I allow the constraints of corporate America to weigh me down and keep me from just traveling whenever I feel for it. And I get anxious if I'm out of the office for a long extent of time. So I typically will travel around the holidays. And so that's really, I rarely will spend, I think Christmas is probably the only holiday that I spend in the country. Other than that, I'm looking to move around, and I try to hit the 3 or 4 countries over the Thanksgiving week because I can take 3 days off and have a 10-day vacation. So for me, I can't necessarily, it's rare that I can take advantage of some of those price deals. However, I use Hopper is my app of choice. It price watches and will annoy you a lot to book whenever the flight price drops. And so that's definitely something that I leverage. I will also utilize the Matrix ITA software, where it basically is the system that informs a lot of these sites and apps and whatnot. So that is very helpful to me as well. And then honestly, good old fashioned price watching. If I'm a cheap individual, if I see a price that I don't like, I'm not booking. And that's just pretty much what it's going to be. I'll sit and wait. And if I truly just want to go somewhere, I will. If I want to go somewhere and I don't see the price, I'll change the destination, and that'll just be what it is. You can also look at surrounding countries that may be cheaper to fly into, and then you can look at domestic travel from there to get to where you're going, and then pick up an incremental country. So that's pretty much my my approach.
Yeah, I agree with what everyone else said, and also. A lot of people don't know about it, but if you use Google Flights, that's been clutch a lot of times as well. You can look at the price of a flight between 2 destinations or multiple destinations for pretty much the entire year. So say you want to go to Switzerland or something like that. You want to go to Zurich and you want to leave from, Washington, D.C., you can look at the price from D.C. to Zurich for the entire year, and it'll highlight what the cheapest price is throughout that whole year. So you already know what the cheapest price you're going to find at that current time is. And sometimes, well, mainly all the time, honestly, if you change the city, like for someone like me, I live in Baltimore. So I pretty much have within an hour about 3 different airports I can choose from, but I don't hesitate to catch the train to New York, which is only about a 2.5-hour Amtrak ride, to catch a deal that's going to save me like $400. And then you can just go from Penn Station in New York to JFK Airport and get to your destination and save yourself some money. It takes a little bit more time, but I guess at that point, sometimes you're looking at a flight that might be $350, and then from New York, and then from Baltimore, it might be $1,150. So I think you can use common sense sometimes, and if you have the time, just book that flight from New York and get in travel mode and make it happen.
Getting travel
Yeah.
is underestimated. That's underrated.
That was
So
something
yeah,
real quick that Milky Digital, I think, had just mentioned in the chat, that definitely booking from foreign websites. So like if you're going to a country and you want to move around throughout that country, if it's too big to travel by car or train, such as India, you can travel by train, but I chose by plane. Booking their in-country airlines is a lot cheaper, for sure a lot cheaper. Some countries, if you're really adventurous, you can wait till you get there to book it because it'll be even cheaper to do that. But that depends on your anxiety level and how much you're willing to wait till you get there to kind of plan on the moment. But definitely when you're in country, use their own airlines.
To piggyback off of that, it just came up in the chat. Ryanair was my best friend when I was in I was based in Europe. Whenever I'm pitching people on why they should travel domestically, I use the Miami example. You know, it costs. You think about how much it costs to get to Miami. You're looking at $350 for a flight, $150 a night for the hotel. You haven't popped a bottle. You haven't had a anything or a hurricane, a bite to eat, nothing. And you're already almost a band in. You can go. I went to Ibiza or Ibiza for those keeping score at home. And when I was in Barcelona for $300 for the entire weekend, everything included. Now, granted, I was based in Barcelona, but still, just flying Ryanair and finding those deals, and then you can just make your money go a lot further than you can domestically.
yeah, and that's something I did in Italy as well. Like Italy, you can do a lot by train, but by the time we started in Milan and ended up in Naples, so we definitely didn't want to ride the train back because our flight was outgoing to out of Milan. We definitely used their in-country airline to fly back, and it was literally like, I want to say like $70 or something like that to fly, and that included baggage, and that was definitely cheaper than taking several trains, and it was quicker as well. But just to, I definitely agree with all the tools that everyone use. I definitely use Google Flights, and I have like literally a Twitter list with all the flight deals that I'm following. I follow a lot of the ones that you all mentioned. But one thing I do a lot is when I'm traveling by myself is I use my points because I can find a flight deal, but once I get that hotel, it's like just me splitting that cost. That's when I need to start looking at points. So because of my jobs, I've accumulated some points, but I've also kind of gotten into the whole credit card thing. I started out with, of course, Delta, since I'm in Atlanta, but I started out with Delta. And the one thing about Amex that I like is that they don't do like a hard hit every time you get an additional Delta card, or excuse me, Amex card. So I've literally been using points. A lot of my flights, like I've only paid for maybe like 4 flights in the past, I want to say like 4 years or so, just because I've used Delta, and I also use Southwest. So I'm fortunate that I'm in Atlanta that we had those two big airlines. But I had the Southwest credit card and got like 110,000 points. So I literally was using those for a while. And then I also do the hotel points. But there's other ways outside of credit cards. I know a lot of people are kind of hesitant when you think of points and credit cards. I also just make my points work for each other. So whenever I'm taking Uber, just like around the city, I can get SPG hotel points with that. If I'm doing Lyft, I can get Delta points. So I just make my points work for each other so that when I do go on the trip by myself, I'm not incurring all these costs.
I use the United card, so like the United Chase card, and they do, I mean, it's $1, it's a point for every dollar you spend, and then double the points for everything on United. It's free bags, you get domestic and international, you get priority boarding. But the great thing about that is you get, when you're traveling, it's no international charges. Mm-hmm. So that's like my go-to if I need a card to use in another country. So that's really great. And United does kind of fly everywhere. So I like, that's my card that I'll plug for United.
Yeah, and then another thing, you said that you don't have the international charges. It's great too, because if you book your travel with the credit card, you get insurance on something. So you're not having to pay for that additional insurance with the card. So I definitely like using the points, and it's very helpful. So if you're already traveling for work, I would definitely recommend making sure that every trip you take is, you know, locked to your personal account so that you can get those points rack them up with rental cars, with hotels and airlines. So just make sure you're looking at all the different ways. Like I have a whole section on that on the workhardtravelwell.com site. So that's another topic. So we've talked about all of this, but another big thing that a lot of people ask about is how do you ensure that you're like, we talked about nerves and everything, but how do you ensure safety when you're going on a trip?
I think it's just like,
go ahead, Brian.
I mean, I think it's just like being at home. You already know to keep an eye out for like, keep an eye on your surroundings and keep your head up at times. I mean, I think we're all guilty of it. You can grab your phone no matter where you are and find yourself like staring at the phone the whole time you're walking down the street. But it's not always the best idea, especially when you're somewhere that you're, not familiar with. You don't ever know what's going on around you. And I also know that, thankfully, I've never had to deal with anybody trying to pickpocket me or anything. But people in foreign countries or just a different city can usually tell when you're not from there. We tend to like stop at the corner and look down at our phone and look around to see if, we're in the right area and things like that. And people are definitely paying attention to that. So if you really need to sit down and regroup, just go into like a shop or a restaurant or something and get your plan together and then go from there. I don't know if it has anything with being a black man, but people tend to not bother you as well sometimes.
Bridge.
You find them like giving you like a nod or staring at you, and then like they'll start a little conversation here and there. But I don't know if that has anything to do with them like thinking like, oh, let me not bother him or things like that. But it's happened. You can tell when somebody's up to no good normally, but they don't continue to bother me.
Yeah, I definitely think too, kind of like going along what you're saying, I go by the motto, like, fake it till you make it. Like, act like you know where you're going, just sometimes you're not going to know where you're going. But as a female, a lot of people always ask me, like, how do you travel alone and you're a female? And to me, I kind of get offended by that because it's like, well, am I supposed to always have someone with me? Like, am I not allowed to be alone? Like, am I not okay by myself? But it's just being aware of your surroundings. Again, fake it till you make it, act like you're comfortable. Just like Brian said, if you don't know where you're going, there's probably some shop around that you could stop into. Again, with like the preparing ahead, like know where you're going. Kind of the places that I've been to, I've been pretty lucky where they're mostly friendly and obviously they could tell that I'm not from there. So they'll stop and ask, like, do you need directions? And then it's just like kind of reading people and knowing, is it safe to tell them? I never tell people where I'm staying. That's always kind of like the first or second question, like, oh, where are you staying? And I'm like, oh, I forgot the name of it. It's like down the road, or yeah, my boyfriend's back at the hotel. So it's letting them know, like, no, I'm not by myself, or, just gauging it out. But what was I going to say? Yeah, just really know your surroundings as best as you can. Do your research before. Don't just be smart. It's the same as here, as your home. Of course it's different because it's a different surrounding, but you're not like on some party vacation where you can let loose. It's kind of got to be the complete opposite in that end with safety wise.
So I'll take it from a bit of the reverse perspective. The first time that I left the country, I was 14. I went to Paris. I got pickpocketed in the first 3 hours that I was there. They took my wallet. I was trying to be. I got on the subway. They were trying to, and they told us about pickpocketers, and I wanted to catch one. They got me. So I have been very distrustful about people pretty much anywhere I go, just because I learned that lesson early on. To Brian's point, I do think that there is a sense of privilege that we just don't get messed with a whole lot, over there. But I do, again, live by a similar creed as Amanda and don't look like a tourist. And that is whether I'm domestic or whether I'm abroad, if I don't want to look like a walking lick. That's not that's not what you want to be doing. But I think having a plan and researching beforehand and being aware, staying aware of your surroundings is always some good guidelines when staying safe.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I actually had an experience when I didn't research I went to Dubai by myself. It was actually on the way back from Thailand, and I had a stopover in Dubai, and I didn't research anything because I was so focused on the Thailand trip. But I actually got there, and it was Ramadan, and luckily, the hotel, and I went on a tour, they told me, like, don't drink and eat out in public, and the things that you need to do, like, you can't even drink water, chewing gum and stuff. So just kind of being aware of what's going on, the customs and traditions, what's going on, like everyone said, that's something that's very important, because you don't want to be disrespectful and bring attention to yourself, because that's when you really look like a tourist, like everyone else says. Another thing I will say is, like, if you're using Airbnb, the hosts will generally tell you, like, what areas are safe, what things to do. I know in Italy, the Airbnb host told us, definitely don't go in this park at night. Not like I would anyway, but she told us, like, there's pickpockets on the train, things like that. And so the Airbnb host definitely helped us. And I will say, like everyone said, definitely make sure you register your site, your trip on Step, and they will send out notifications. So, for instance, there was some type of disease going on in Thailand, and they sent an email to all of us because they knew we were there. But, if there was an emergency, they can also get in touch with you, and they know that who's out there when you're traveling abroad. So it's very important. And then, just like Amanda said, I don't publish all my stuff online. I know, like, I have a travel blog and I have, like, social media, but I'm not always doing everything in real time. I'm just like, if I'm by myself, I'm like, hey, I'm at this bar, like, come meet me. And, with all my followers, I just don't do a lot of things in real time. As well as, like, when I'm out and people are asking questions, I have actually made up kind of like a story. Like, when I was in Turks and Caicos by myself, I was just like, oh yeah, my family's back at the hotel or whatnot, and I really didn't have any family there. Somebody tweeted me and was like, are you on the trip by yourself? And I definitely didn't respond to that. So just making sure, like, you're not putting all your information online. I know that's very hard with today, but just be very cautious when you're on a solo trip.
The ambiguous background is not to be overlooked.
I think something too, Kim, that you hit on that I think is really important is cultural sensitivity. That can play a big part in safety. So knowing where you're going, what the culture is there, what the customs are. Some cultures it's rude to look people in the eye. Some cultures it's rude to shake their hand. Some cultures you have to shake their hand or bow your head or whatever it is. So the more that you're culturally aware and they see that their culture and you're adapting to it, then you don't look like the typical tourist. And it's just a sense of respect for them as well, to be more welcoming in that sense.
Mm-hmm. And then just to add on to that too, if you look at, like, the customs website, they'll actually give you tips per country, like, hey, there's actually people that are trying to scam you. I know, right. Like, I think I looked up a while ago at Mexico, and they just said, like, there's people disguised as this. They may come up and ask you this. So, you can take a brief look at that before you go on a trip, just to see what's going on in that country.
I think one thing to piggyback off of that, and specifically this was just talked about in one of the guests that we had on the podcast it went to Bali, and she was saying that she was in a situation where she knew she was getting scammed, but the value of being able to keep your cool when you are getting scammed and stay in that. So especially when you're alone and you're inherently at the mercy of the situation a little bit, just because you can't control anything. You may or may not speak the language. You probably don't know many people there, but you want to see these things. And so just the value of keeping yourself safe by keeping a cool head, I think is something that people should keep in mind as well, because it's easy to get pissed off when, a ride should be $5 and they hit you over the head with 25, but that $20 is not worth the broken leg or your life, which is down to just being.
Yeah.
You always got a budget for getting got.
Right.
So that's with any trip, solo or not. You got to put that in the budget. And just like Josh said, you got to stay cool. Another like weird tip that I would say is like know the laws in the country, because they're all different. In some countries you do not want to get stuck in. Some countries you could pay off the police. So it's all different and relative. Not that I've ever been there.
Okay, so we talked about safety, and so how do you connect with other travelers when you're on a trip, or if you want to, but how do you connect with other travelers? I know for me, I'll like sign up for a tour if, depending on how much time I have, and that allows me to connect with other travelers. I'm not afraid to actually go to like the bars. I know the first time I did it, I actually went to DC. It was kind of weird. It was on U Street. I think that's the big street up there. And I was just like, okay, I kind of feel weird. Also, I felt kind of old as well being there. But after a couple of times, going to bars and things like that allowed me to connect with other travelers and solo travelers. So it got to the point where, hey, like meeting up with people, like what's your comfort level and how do you find other travelers while you're on the trip?
I would definitely say social media groups and also the bar. I think alcohol tends to
absolutely
and get us out of normal chill mode, if you want to say that. So you end up at a bar, you order a drink or two. Normally, people see you alone. Some people just start conversation with you, and then from there you're good to go. I've done that in other countries, and then ended up like bar hopping with the people that I met at the bar, and had some of the best times of my life. Gone to the club alone in other countries, and ended up missing tours the next day because I had a little bit too much to drink. But the bars definitely help. You'll meet people in your hotel as well. I personally never stayed in a hostel, and it's just by choice, not anything that I avoid, but it just hasn't happened yet. Not that I'm totally against it, but I know a lot of people meet others in hostels, and they've made like lifelong friends from the others that stayed in that hostel, and they meet up on trips from then on up. And yeah.
The trip I spoke about before. Go ahead, Amanda.
I was gonna say I've kind of done it all, where I've stayed at like kind of the nicer hotel, then I've stayed at the hostel, then I've done like the shared Airbnb. But when I was in Thailand, I didn't really meet too many people at my hotel, but I met them like on the day trips, and I found that, especially in the countries that I was going to, it's kind of like a traveler's world. So I'm on these like day excursions, and I'm meeting other people that are traveling. And then that's where I say like leave time open, because that's where the adventure happens. So like I met a guy from Mexico, and he was like, you want to go on this bike ride? So we ended up hanging out. We met up again in another city. In India, I met a couple that I was sharing an Airbnb with. So like we ended up hanging out for the day. And then 5 months later, I met her in Amsterdam. So it's really, I personally don't meet that many people out drinking, because I find that I don't really go out drinking too much when I do solo trips. I think that's maybe my safety level of where I am. I give myself a night or two, but maybe that is the female in me. I'm retracting on my earlier statement. But I think it's definitely true. Like I'll go to a restaurant by myself and sit there, and I think people are more prone to coming up to you. Or I also feel that I'm more prone to going up to people if I'm by myself. I don't know. It's just when you're traveling, you're kind of in like a different mind frame of, at least for me personally, it's just, just talk to anyone, even if it's just like, hey, can I get some directions? And then if the conversation hits off, like, oh, you want to show me around, or what are you up to, or what's a good area? But I think through day tours, shared Airbnbs is a great way to meet people. A safe way, at least for me, that I've had the experience of doing. kind of doing like the free walking tours, like Brian said before, is a great way to learn the city and then to meet other people too.
I would definitely agree and echo a lot of those sentiments. I've never met a stranger before. I pride myself on being an extrovert, and I'll talk to a tree if it'll talk to me. So I think like, especially that being abroad and being dependent on other people, not knowing anything, helps a lot. As well as sincerity. A lot of people are jerks. So when you go and you meet people, they don't want to help you. But if they see that you're sensitive to the culture and are genuinely just like a citizen of the world trying to expand your horizons and learn, then most people with good energy are receptive to that. I think also social media helps a lot. You never know where people are traveling these days, and is bound to be a friend of a friend of a friend that is in one of these countries or a new state or city or what have you, where you're traveling, that can that can help you out or meet up with you, or at the very least just provide some perspective on the area that you're in.
Okay. All right. Well, I have a lot of good questions, so I'm gonna try to wrap it up. So there's one from Vernitra, and she asks, what are some like suggestions for like places you would recommend, like either domestically or internationally for, a first trip?
I think Europe is always a great first place to start. As Brian mentioned, you can go to London and they speak the language. It resembles New York very heavily, so you can get a stamp without being outside of your comfort zone. I think Canada also falls into that. Toronto specifically falls into that. You might go to Montreal and be in a whole another world. But yeah, I think those two places internationally are great non-resort trips that you can take to get your feet wet.
I'm going to go a little more extreme. I'm going to say, I think Thailand, I'm a big proponent for it for your first solo trip. The reason that I say it, I think the culture is so completely different. And you get kind of a little bit of everything in Thailand. So you can get your big city. Bangkok is New York on steroids. So you get that city feel with the Asian culture. And then you can shoot down to Phuket and relax on the beach and, excuse me, see the beautiful islands, go on the boats, go snorkeling, do all of that. And then you can head up to the mountains in Chiang Mai and go to the elephant camps and kind of be one with nature and do hikes and go to waterfalls and do all of that. So it's like a little bit of mix of everything. And super friendly. The Thai people are really friendly, super easy to get around. Super, super cheap. Like the most expensive thing is you're going to pay for the flight, but like you will eat for like an expensive meal is $5. And that's like a steak dinner here at Mastro's. So it's super cheap there, super cheap to get around. I would say if you really want to push yourself to do Thailand, I'm all about helping you do it and giving you tips. But I would say make that your first go.
Yeah. I definitely agree with Thailand. I didn't go to Thailand by myself, but I did like break away from the group when I was there, and I felt fine. And it's so cheap, like you said. So I definitely recommend it.
Yeah, and as far as domestic destinations, I started off with like the major cities. I haven't been to Chicago alone, but
come on, brother.
Awesome city.
Let's go.
And, New York, Chicago. I mean, just any of the major cities. I think you can get around fine in any of those and find plenty to do. And you won't be able to do everything in a weekend or more days than that. So I think that helps. And then chances are, by you being in the U.S., you'll know someone in those states that can help you out if you need it.
Yeah, as far as the states, I would recommend also San Francisco. I did a solo trip out there. Very good food. It is kind of expensive, but it's definitely beautiful. I mean, you can hop over to Napa Valley. I was adventurous and actually rode a bike across the Golden Gate Bridge, like by myself, and that was pretty cool. So I would recommend that. And then we talked about like adventure in Europe and like getting out there. But if you are looking for R&R, I would recommend Turks and Caicos for a solo trip. I wouldn't go there expecting to do much. It really is just like if you're looking for some rest and relaxation. About the most adventure I had was driving around a rental car without like GPS signal and stuff out there, and they didn't have street lights. So I would definitely recommend it as well. You have to actually, I wouldn't say you have to, but it's really recommended that you rent a car there because the taxis are very expensive getting around. So it's a small island. So I literally rented a car and was comfortable about like the second night I was there.
You touched on something that I'd like to highlight for domestic travel. In cities like New York, Chicago, specifically with robust transit systems that can circumvent your car costs. When you go to LA, you absolutely need a car or somewhere that someone to transport you around. So maybe if you are looking, that can help. If you are going somewhere alone, making sure that you have transportation that won't break the bank is, pretty pivotal.
Okay. And I guess one of the last ones. So would you recommend, like, I know we touched on like Airbnb, hostels. Would you recommend like either a established resort, a hotel, or Airbnb, or do you think it's just based on the person?
I think it's based on the person and the country. I guess it also depends on the city in the country, but like, for example, when I was in India, there were certain cities where you weren't going to get me to stay anywhere but a hotel. It was, you're staying in a hotel because that is the norm there and that's what you do. But when I stayed in Mumbai, I did an Airbnb. And it was the best because I got to immerse with the local people. My hosts were great. They were super young, told me where to go. I got to meet people that I was staying with. I think it depends on you personally, but it also really depends on the country that you're going to and where you are. If the country is open to Airbnb, I recommend doing an Airbnb. I think it's the most authentic local experience that you can get somewhere. But it depends on your comfort level as well. I'm an Airbnb, hostel, non-chain hotel type of person. Anytime I can.
Yeah, I would say I definitely feel like I think it depends on the person specifically. I'm not a resort person at all. I want to be with the people. If I'm going to travel, I don't want to see anybody from America, period. Like I want to be totally isolated for however long I'm there. That being said though, I was desensitized to hostels. I think hostels get a bad rap. So I will take this as an opportunity to get on my hostel soapbox. The movie terrified me when I saw it, and so when I heard it in real life, I wanted no parts. Through conversation, I've learned I'm not the only person who has suffered from that. But hostelworld.com is the site that I leveraged to book hostels when I was in Europe specifically, and it's helpful because there are different types of hostels, and so I will frequently tell people if you get a 2-bed private room, that's just a no-frills hotel room. It's gonna have a cafeteria floor, but it's gonna have a clean bed with clean sheets, with one towel, with a bed, with a bathroom, and there's not gonna be any flowers. There may or may not be a TV. Like it's just a no-frills hotel room. So, and your dollars go far. You can get that for $30 a night, which is beautiful.
Yeah, well, that's why I love having like this open conversation because I have not ventured into the hostels. Like, I'm somewhat like Brian. I have done the Airbnb and the hotels, but when you talk about the hostel being basically a no frills, if you get the double one, so that's something I need to look into more because it's definitely going to provide some cost savings.
I do think that Airbnb has kind of taken a little bit of their flavor a little bit because you can get a similar thing where you don't have to book a whole apartment. You can get a room. You can do a lot of different things. So, I mean, which is good because it's a buyer's market and you have a lot of different options. But yeah, just the options to keep on your radar.
Let's see. From Nicole, like, how do you all deal with language barriers when you're traveling solo?
So I get that question a lot. That's one of the main questions I get. As soon as I get home, people are like, "Where'd you go?" And then they're like, "Well, how'd you deal with the language barrier? How did you communicate?" And the more I travel, that's one thing that frustrates me about being educated in America. Most other countries they speak multiple languages. I remember being in South Africa and the tour guide is like, "You only speak one language?" We're like, "Yeah, we only speak English." And he is like, "Do you know how?" I forgot the word he used, but he said like he would just feel horrible if he was only able to speak one language. And he was saying how liberating it was. He knew like 6 languages, and I've been on other trips where the different passengers in the van during the tour were from different countries, and the tour guide is like, speaking to me in English, then he switches over to Spanish, and then Portuguese, and then they go to French, and I'm just sitting there amazed. But then you learn that like they start to learn different languages from the time they go to school. So a lot of times when we think that we're going to go somewhere and the person is not going to be able to communicate with us at all, most of the time they know a little bit. And that makes it easy. And I saw someone put Google Translate in there. That helps as well. But I've never really run into a real barrier where I couldn't get my thought or my point across to someone. And normally, if you link up with a local or you have that guide that's with you, like the last time I went to Kenya earlier this month, the end of last month, they speak Swahili there as well as English. And I mean, I pretty much had a private driver the whole time I was there, but that was from just running into him on the last trip. And he was very inexpensive. And a lot of people there, they drive tourists around to make a living. And so when we would go places, he'd just speak to them in Swahili and make things much easier, even though they knew English, but it's just easier for them to communicate. So never really run into a barrier.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever run into a barrier either. I definitely, who just said it? I think Erica just said it, that they feel ignorant when they're in other countries.
Yeah.
Ditto, because everyone speaks English everywhere. And they're like, "What do you speak?" I'm like, "Oh, just English, a little bit of sign language, a little bit of Spanish, but that's about it." But I definitely try and learn like the basics of where I'm going. Like for sure, the first thing I want to learn when I get there is like, what is your hello? What is your thank you? What is your please? And then any other custom like the what's ups or, anything that they do commonly over there in whatever country that you're in. But I don't know, it's kind of the fun in it. And when they don't speak English and, you have to do hand gestures or point to places or figure out what you're trying to say to each other. But it's never been an issue that I'm like freaking out and what do I do? I've never had that experience. I think everywhere in the world, somebody somewhere speaks enough English to get by.
So I echo what Erica said in the comments as far as feeling ignorant when you go somewhere and you don't know the language. And I think it comes back down to courtesy, which is something that Amanda touched on. I actually do speak Spanish, and so I will try. I have a base Latin knowledge, which can help in like with romantic languages. But you go to India, what are you going to do? It's like you just got to figure it out. I found that like learning the basic words and putting forth an effort is helpful. But also podcasts. There are a lot of podcasts that will teach you the basics of languages. And so you can, it'll give you a base, but don't let your hubris come in play and make you feel like you've gotten fluent in a week, because that's likely not going to happen. But you can learn key phrases to get around, which can help build a rapport with the locals.
Okay. And just to kind of like put it all together and sum it up as we close up, Milky, I think it's Milky Digital asked, like, and someone else asked in the questions before, like, do you prefer to travel solo? And like, what does it all mean to you? Where's that question? What is the purpose, and why is it so important? What do you get out of it? Just kind of like to sum it all up about like traveling solo.
I think I'll go ahead and jump in. It's hard because people always say, which do you prefer, solo or with someone else? And I think now that I've done so many solo trips, traveling with other people is really a little bit difficult. But I prefer solo in the sense that I'm kind of in the phase of my life where I'm like figuring out who I am, what I want to do, what I like. And solo traveling gives me that to the extreme. It's helped build confidence. It's helped build my interests. It's helped build, figuring out what I like, what kind of people I want in my life, what I'm interested in, what I want to do. It just, I don't know, it's like an all around encompassing self-awareness. It's just, I'm at loss for words because it just, I think about the experiences that I've had and how I've brought them back to my everyday life and just how I've changed through my trips. Because when you're out there solo, it's you're making your own decisions. You have no one to look to tell you if you're right or wrong. You're testing yourself. You are putting yourself in situations that you might not have ever thought that would happen, and you grow from it. And if you don't think you're growing from it, you are. Even if you figure it out a year later and you're like, oh shoot, that happened because of this, or you put two and two together. It's just exactly what Erica just said. It truly, as cliche it is, it's life-changing. So I recommend everyone getting out of their box and trying it at least once, even if it's a small domestic trip, or even if it's going, if you want to start super small and go to the movies by yourself or go to dinner by yourself and see how that feels, and then, take it from there. But just do it.
Yeah, I agree. It's definitely life-changing. And then I'm not ashamed to admit that I posted this yesterday on Instagram, like in the story. I hate group trips. It's all good. Sometimes I've done it a few times. I do it every now and then. But normally they come with an itinerary. And, you might have a long night the night before and wake up in the morning, or not wake up, and it's like 8 a.m. and somebody's banging on the door and they're like, we got breakfast at 9, or the van is coming at 8:30, and you're like, I don't feel like doing that anymore. And when you don't have the leisure to say like, nah, I'm not going, because normally either you ended up wasting money, or you got the other people on the trip like, what do you mean you're not going? We're all in this together. Let's go. Come on, it's time to go. Whereas like, you go on a solo trip, I've booked tours before, and I'll look at my phone and see what time it is in the middle of the night and be like, nah, I'm not going. Then I just end up sleeping until I feel like waking up, and then doing what I feel like doing after that. So it's a lot of freedom. That's the main thing I think I like about it.
So I piggyback off of what Brian said. I'm not a huge fan of mandatory group trips, or group trips with mandatory schedules. I abide by the like the wolf pack model, where I will go. I have 2 or 3 of my homeboys who I know we rock, and we can go wherever, and it's all good. If you want to go and break off, do your own thing for a day, for a few hours, whatever, you can go do that. No hard feelings. Everybody's cool, and we know enough. We travel with each other enough to know how each other moves, so that nobody gets lost, or left behind there. I more so use solo travel as a tool. As I mentioned at the top of the event, I don't like being beholden to other people and other people's plans. So if there's a place, if I want to go to Egypt really badly, but people are queasy about that. But I think one thing in the female topic has been touched a couple times, but women are leading the solo travel movement. And so as the ladies are leading the way in venturing out to these different countries, I think it affirms the fellas that we can do it too. And so that's something, but I'm not going to wait on other people to have that revelation. I'll just go on my own. And then just figure out the cost at that point.
I've been trying to tell you to go to Egypt.
You have. It's been on me.
Yeah. And just to kind of like echoing everyone else, it's definitely like, gives you like an exhilarating feeling, just like a sense of accomplishment. Like I talked about my trip earlier to San Francisco by myself, and like I literally just decided to ride the bike across the Golden Gate Bridge like when I got there. My phones died halfway through the ride. It was like 8 miles. The lady told me it would take like a couple of hours. that wasn't the case. And it started to get like dark by the time I got done with the ride. I was like getting off, walking beside the bike and everything. But when I got to like the end of it, actually just like ended up at a restaurant eating, like locked my bike up and everything. And I just was just like, wow, like I was kind of scared, like out of my mind a little bit. But it was just like just an exhilarating feeling when I was done. And it's the same thing when I'm going out of the country by myself. Just like being able to like tackle some issues and like knowing that it's just me, like I can't like hey, you know, go to my friend or whatever and something's going on. Just being able to accomplish those issues as well as just doing it whatever I want. Like Brian said, like, you know, if you don't want to go somewhere, you don't have to. You don't have to rely on other people's schedules. I've done the group trips. I'm not a big group trip person. I literally travel with probably the same people that I've been traveling with for like a few years now. So it's either I'm traveling with like my best friends, boyfriend, or by myself. And, you know, somebody put in on Instagram, like, you know, if you're not single, you shouldn't really be traveling by yourself. And I disagree with that. Because like that helps build the relationship. Like you don't always have to go on a trip with your significant other.
Right.
It's okay to take a solo trip. Granted, though, you know, it's different when you like bring kids and stuff in. I can't really speak to that, but just, you know, you shouldn't take offense. Your family and your loved ones should not take offense. It literally just is life changing, like people have said, and it helps build esteem. It helps just all around your character. And teaches a lot of life lessons. So I definitely would recommend it.
I want to comment. There's some you can't travel with everybody going on in the chat. I often say you travel with people, you either come back best friends or worst enemies. So if you want to have a polarizing experience, go head out of the country where you depend on.
Help you figure it out real quick.
Right.
Right.
Yeah, you leave a trip with your best friends, like, yo, I would never go anywhere with them.
Like I'm smooth on you.
And they're like, where you been at? Like, chilling, but you sitting there still trying to like calm down and chill out from dealing with them from the time that you were with them on the trip. So you're like, I need a break now, man.
Yeah. Well, this is very like an informative chat. Like even just, you know, even though we've all been doing it, I think it helped us to kind of see what everyone else is doing, some best practices, best tips, especially like with the deals. So I really enjoyed this chat, and I thank everyone for joining. Definitely thank Brian, Amanda, and Josh for participating and like giving their knowledge on everything. So what's going to happen is I'm going to upload this video for the replay. So it's going to take, you know, maybe a few hours to encode it and all that good stuff. So I'll be sending out an email with the replay as well as some of the top discounts that I use when I'm traveling solo. So it's a guide for the best deals and also how to like find deals beyond the flight deal. So I'll be sending that out as well as links to everyone, how to connect with everyone. Everyone's blog, from Beyond Be More's blog to Travel Guides as a podcast. It'll have a link on there, and definitely follow Amanda Frankie on Instagram, as well as her hashtag is Frankie's Flight. And you're already familiar with workhardtravelwell.com. So I'm also on every social media channel, and then hashtag workhardtravelwell, where you can see a lot of people sharing their pictures, and I repost it. And we have like a really very interactive on every social media channel with that. So with that said, if you guys have any upcoming things that you guys want to let the audience know of, please feel free. Otherwise, I'll include the links to everything in the email.
I'm good.
Okay.
Thank you for having
All
us.
right.
Yeah, thanks.
Thanks, guys, and stay tuned for the next Work Hard Travel Well chat, and I'll be giving more information on that later. But thank you guys for attending so much, and have a great night.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.